I kept so busy creating all these years through hospital stays and infusions that I realized only recently I forgot to grieve my illness.
My heavens. Wow.
And I know that may not sound like that big of an issue when people are losing loved ones from COVID left and right. But maybe I didn't realize I needed to grieve. I didn't lose someone I dearly loved, or at least that's how I looked at it myself, right? I just became AD, the muse, inspiring everyone else in all parts of my life. And I jumped, what I like to say, like to these practices of creating before letting my illness in. I jumped to that. It's like I didn't put my own oxygen mask on before attempting to put those on around those around me.
I work best with a deadline and knowing it's going to be produced.
Sure.
You just work. That's why I'm saying it's like television. You know it. You have a deadline. You know it's going to be produced. You got to come across, and then you just let it go, and you just do it, and you keep changing. There's not a whole lot of time for rewrites. Rewrites come when the second time we do the show, and now I'm looking at things and rewriting some things. I'm finding there's not as much that I want to rewrite so much as I want to clarify.
By the time I'm showing anything to an investor, it's something that I've been working on passionately for a long time and had a lot of external feedback on, starting with my wife, who's a storyteller.
Great.
So what I'm hoping for, just as I am in the theater, is I'm hoping to create those moments of catharsis, for the audience, where you feel the audience moved, laughing, to crying, moved. That I'm hoping with an investor to find people who similarly are moved by the material of itself, and that I'm building a team of what I call true believers.
The art of making art is putting it together bit by bit.
Welcome, Lisa Snyderman, AD. We're so glad to have you. What a privilege to have you in this space.
I am so excited and privileged to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. There is so much that I'd like to talk to you about, but let's start with the Grieving Project. Can you talk about how that came to be?
Absolutely. So the Grieving Project, but I have to go back a little bit.
Okay.
I have to talk about who I am a little bit in order to describe why and how that came to be.
Let's do that.
So I am an artist. I go by she, her. I'm a playwright and an artist, and I'm a disabled artist advocate. And I go by Aeide, my artist name. And Aeide was the first muse of song in Greek mythology. And I wanted this affiliation with inspiration in order to remind myself to inspire and be inspired. And I didn't really know that muse, that term, was really going to be central in my life path. And so I often create and center characters with illnesses to express and foster healing and advocate for people with chronic illness and disabilities to improve their mental health, grieve, and thrive. And I've been honored with many awards for songwriting and films and stage plays, but all while battling a rare, disabling autoimmune disease for 15 years. And that is called dermatomyositis, and it's a progressive muscle weakness disease that attacks my immune system, skin, and muscles, and affects my energy, stamina, and mobility. And the reason I'm going back to this is because my story is about going from surviving to thriving through creating an art and expression and attitude to grieving. So by asking me to start at the end, it is like saying, okay, well, I have to tell you my story to tell you why I get to the Grieving Project.
Great. Tell us your story. We want to hear. Leaning in.
All right. So let's go from the surviving part. So picture it. Picture yourself. You're back in 2008. It's 6 weeks before you're about to get married, and you're promoting your first full album and you're working full time as an environmental scientist, and you get this painful red rash on your skin, nail beds, and knuckles. You go to a dermatologist thinking he's going to give you some cream and send you on your way. And instead, he tells you have some unpronounceable disease and he sends you to a rheumatologist, and you're 35 years old. So that was my start of like, what is this thing? And before that point, I was already a singer-songwriter and working full-time as an environmental scientist. And the worst of this happened in 2010 when I was hospitalized for a month due to complete muscle weakness. And it was a flare of my disease. And I spent months in rehab having to relearn how to sit, stand, walk, and then eventually how to play and sing again. And I'm just putting the picture, to kind of put it into perspective. I went from complete independence to total dependence. And many months I relied on care, right? From bathers and physical and occupational therapists and family and friends to shuttle me each month to infusions. And I learned this new baseline, that involved wheelchairs and ramps and shakes that my husband would have to make for me and soft food. And my body was basically waging war. And what did I do? All I could do was stay positive and create. And so my creating is where I kind of take myself from surviving to thriving. That first part where I was like, I'm pushing myself obsessively from the time I leave the hospital into creating. But I kept so busy creating all these years through hospital stays and infusions that I realized only recently I forgot to grieve my illness. My
friends. Wow.
And I know that may not sound like that big of an issue when people are losing loved ones from COVID left and right. But maybe I didn't realize I needed to grieve. I didn't lose someone I dearly loved, or at least that's how I looked at it myself, right? I just became Aidi, the muse, inspiring everyone else in all parts of my life. And I jumped, what I like to say, like to these practices of creating before letting my illness in. I jumped to that. It's like I didn't put my own oxygen mask on before attempting to put those on around those around me. And that was this huge thing of like, oh, right? You're saying, what is the spark? So if we really started this whole interview over and I said, at one of my infusions in 2019, I shared a video I wrote called Keep Shining. And it shares my story and struggle with rare illness with a nurse. And she told me that my video can help patients get in touch and access feelings around their illness they couldn't otherwise access. You might probably be left with a little bit of like questions of who is this person and why is she starting with that, right, to introduce her story. So this is part of why I want to share my story, right, is to say like my spark for the Grieving Project was actually this video. The reason being is because hearing these words and realizing that I am finally at the first time actually sort of allowing myself to grieve in 2019, by the way. And I'm sharing that my hospital experience was in 2010. So it took me these 9 years of really obsessively creating and escaping and doing anything I could to not feel to finally get to the place of, oh, I may have forgotten to grieve. And not only that, I bet you others have too. Yes. And if I can create something to help others who may have forgotten to grieve, that to me is very impactful. That would be worth, my energy and time. And in fact, that's what I did during the pandemic. In August of 20, I created the Grieving Project. And you ask what it is. It is a powerful spoken word musical audiobook that sets the stage as a grief to music. This is the start of the Grieving Project. And what I mean by that is that the audiobook takes basically characters. It has 4 characters, and they all deal with different chronic illnesses, including myself. And I plunge them basically through these 14 stages of grieving and thriving. And there's about 22 tracks. They're all done with music under them, but they're spoken word. And the reason that this is important is that this sort of paves the way for the next stage of what I'm doing, which is a musical. And so I've been adapting the audiobook since 2020, and I've had workshops, with creative teams since 21 through 23, casting disabled and chronically ill actors. And as I said before, I've never had a full stage production because of health setbacks and compromised immunity. So my dream is really to see disabled actors reflect this work on stage. And basically, the way I look at it is the musical is an original spoken word musical about finding your voice. And it explores concepts of mental health, transformation, identity, acceptance, grieving, and thriving in 14 stages that asks, how can we live fully and thrive if we don't grieve? And what's unique about this is it integrates this concept that the lead characters only speak during songs until each finds her or his voice and sings. So that is also what I'm bringing to the table in terms of a unique concept about this show. To think about the structure of the show, as I said, it's 14 stages. There's 7 grieving and 7 thriving. And great. The grieving are adapted from Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, the 5 kind of known and stages of grief that are a little bit like I've seen 7 stages. You've seen all kinds of stages of grief. The stages of thriving are actually something that I created. And it's from my own experience and journey living with illness that I created these new stages, things like awaken and rejuvenate and connect and, shine and thrive. And so all of these are kind of almost coping strategies in some way of ways that we think. I think of it steps on the road to wellness. That it doesn't necessarily have to be linear again, but because it's a show, it's going to have a structure of linear 14 stages, this particular one. And the first act will be grieving and the second act will be thriving. But the underlying principles are that grief is not linear. And you can keep telling. One of the ways I've done this too is that my main character, Lise, while everybody else is trying to grieve in Act 1, she avoids grief.
Oh, sure.
Then, while everybody else is trying to thrive in Act 2, she's starting to grieve. So that's one thing I'm trying to put into it. And the reason I put this in as structure is important is because this tells you that from the beginning, this is a heroine story. I have to tell you about the story a little bit. So while the world deals with the outbreak of a pandemic in 2020, imagine, right? My protagonist, named Lise, inspired by my own struggle with chronic illness, is stuck in San Francisco. So she's getting infusions, she's got a disease, she's home, she's unable to write new music and has a pandemic, right? So she learns she is an Empower Arts competition called the Grieving Project. She's a finalist. And she's devoid of any inspiration to write and perform a new song for this quickly approaching deadline, which happens to be a week. And along her search, she meets these 3 other finalists on a Zoom show, these artists that are all each battling a different physical or mental illness and disability. And they send Lise on this unexpected spiritual quest to find her voice and accept herself. And everybody has to discover what grieving and thriving mean when struggling with illness and what happens when we don't. And the reason I give you that synopsis is because if you hear, it's about finding your voice.
It's so interesting, Lise. This makes me think of a colleague of mine, Tallie McRae, who started the National Disabilities Theater. And just before the pandemic, I saw a performance that she created all with disabilities in mind in terms of the creative crew, the actors on stage. It was called Emily Driver's Great Race Through Space, or Through Time and Space. And La Jolla Playhouse was a fundamental partner in creating this piece. And, we talk about disability gain, and it was so interesting to be there with my boys. And I don't think I've shared this with you, who both have mental disabilities, intellectual delay, and seeing them consume art in the way that was helpful and safe for them. And then also one of my very first producing projects looked at disabilities, and I'm hearing you talk about the different stages of grief and thriving. This particular project was looking at how we come to terms and accept our disabilities or our great abilities.
We are entering kind of a new paradigm in theater. And I feel like we get to create what we want to see, right? We create the change in the world. And so I want to be part of creating the change for at least this niche, of community. Sure. I want to be ensuring, that we can give and continue to engage with chronically ill and disabled communities, but also acknowledge, that we have this opportunity, to make theater whatever it is that we want to see in the future.
Wow, Lisa, it's so exciting to hear the groundbreaking work and how you're approaching it for disabled artists, but also for every artist, and seeing your work be a place that people can turn to in their own processes for grieving and learning to thrive. I think it's really exciting. Tell us how we can find more about the Grieving Project.
Sure. So you can go to thegrievingproject.com/musical. That's the page that talks about the musical, but the Grieving Project is all on thegrievingproject.com. And you can also find me and the Grieving Project on social media. So on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, it's Grieving Project. On TikTok, I just started a new TikTok. It's Grieving Project Musical, and I am sharing from page to stage, making a new musical. So I'm sharing all of what led up to the musical, including the whole audiobook process. And I also share tips and tricks to thrive. So yeah, continue to connect, follow me. And if there is interest in this, please get in touch, because we're really interested in having, a robust team from disability, tech, theater, and mental health. And I think that having that team is really going to be, instrumental in having success.
Lisa, I'm so excited for you. Thank you for spending a few minutes with us. Will you keep in touch? Will you let us know how the project progresses? We'd love to hear.
Absolutely. Thank you, Megan Ann, for having me.
Thank you.
Terry and Daryl, what a treat to have you both in this conversation. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I can't believe that we were actually talking to the team that wrote 39 shows in 5 years. That's Daryl, I know you're here and you have to break this down for us. The audience that's listening to this podcast are emerging producers and first-time investors. This particular season 2, we are doing a deep dive, a special focus on writers. So Daryl, I'm so glad you're here. And I know that Terry has been a huge part of this production, including everything from behind the stage and marketing. But while we have you on this camera, Daryl, you have to tell us, what was it like to write 39 shows in 5 years?
It was a long time ago. I don't know if I remember very much. We were talking about that last night, and I was saying that to me it was sort of like we had a theater, we had people working for us, we had people coming to see shows, so we had to have shows for them to see. So I looked at it as, well, this show's one show after another. Basically, that's what was going on. It was like writing for television. You write your script, you write everything, and you get it all produced. And then while you're doing that, you're working on the next one. And, it's just going on like that. She says 39 shows. I would say maybe 10 good ones. Maybe more. I don't know.
You know what? I'm going to say, even if...
What's interesting to me is that if I go through all of them, I'll have through all these shows, and there's one or two really good songs from each one. I'm trying to figure out some way to put those together as a new musical, maybe. I don't know. Music.
So you have these characters that speak to you, and they tell you what songs they want to sing and where they want to take the show. How do you? What's your process like for writing for them? You have a piano in your home? Do you go to a studio? How do you make manifest those voices that you're hearing?
I have to remember back when we were doing this, I was working day and night to try and write things, produce them, direct them, or act in them, and get everything ready. It was nice when we had enough shows that I didn't have to write 10 shows a year. It was nice to be able to write 3 because we could bring back some of the old ones. But I don't really know exactly what that process is. I've always been magic. It's just you sit down and let's put it this way. I work best with a deadline and knowing it's going to be produced.
Sure.
You just work. That's why I'm saying it's like television. You know it. You have a deadline. You know it's going to be produced. You got to come across, and then you just let it go, and you just do it, and you keep changing. There's not a whole lot of time for rewrites. Rewrites come on the second time we do the show, and now I'm looking at things and rewriting some things. I'm finding there's not as much that I want to rewrite so much as I want to clarify. Maybe expand a little bit, but not really change in terms of the characters or anything like that. I remember I was looking at a story about Jerry Herman when he was writing Hello Dolly. He met with David Merrick on a Friday. He talked about it. He went home over the weekend and wrote 3 songs. The 3 songs ended up in the show. And how did he do that? I don't know. No one knows how those things work. It just works. You have to do it, and you want it to be the best work you can make it. So, for example, Nutcracker, I'm rewriting the entire first song because it's never been right for me, and we have a pretty good orchestrator working on that. I want to make sure that the whole thing fits together now.
I asked you in advance, like, if you could go back and give advice. Go back to your experience. And if you had to give advice to producers now who are very much in the thick of it, like you were, what would be your advice to these producers?
You have to really think responsibly financially because you can really get yourself in way, way, way over your head. And we came close, but when we got the jobs in New Jersey, then we were all back on track and we just slowly paid it off. Another thing was to keep production values as high as possible. Don't ever be making that the thing that you're stingy on. The production values, the singers have to be the best you can find. The costumes, the sets, the lighting, the technical stuff, it all has, that's so important to making the audience really enjoy the whole production. I don't think people realize how that's even figured when they are producing a show and they go to, they get the contract and they go, oh my gosh, I had no idea it's thousands of dollars. One thing I did really want to mention is that our shows are mainly for high schools and for professional and community theaters. Middle schools, I really can't imagine really any of our shows being done. Maybe some of the ensemble things like the Sherlock Holmes Baker Street Irregulars could certainly be played by middle schoolers, but I can't imagine a middle school doing it. So it's for high schools and colleges. And we decided, because we're retired teachers and we really care about teaching and keeping theater really going in the schools, that we are only charging the fees for the materials. That's the entire licensing fees. For now, MTI does that, I know, but only for the middle schools. If they're being produced in a high school or in a college, they do all those licensing fees. But we are dedicated to educational school productions, and so they only just buy the licensing, or the licensing with the streaming rights and all the other rights with it that go with it. That's included if they buy the materials. That's it. No extra thousands of dollars.
No middleman.
Right.
That's so generous. And Terry, you just answered one of the questions, which is, how does being a teacher influence the work you're doing? Right. There you go. You have a whole appreciation for what it's like, the costs that are entailed, and you make it available so that the students that like you have worked with will be able to have the opportunity to do these great shows. Good for you.
Right. Because I think, more and more school budgets are getting cut and the arts are pretty much the first thing to go. And so, we want to do our part. And then we also want to do, we talked about the legacy. We haven't yet talked about, but the legacy giving is another really important thing. Last
Yes.
year, do you want me to go go for
Yeah,
that?
that's great. Yes, please.
Last year, I watched a week-long series of webinars at Dominus Guild. Daryl's a member of Dominus Guild, and they were talking about how important it is for writers to make some plans for their work and their the longevity of their work after they're gone. And they gave a lot of horror stories about people who didn't do that, and they ended up finding things that they had no idea what they really were, and just all kinds of horror stories. And it really convinced me that we needed to create a legacy trust. Daryl doesn't just have his 39 musicals. He also wrote 60 or so in that neighborhood, country songs, folk and country songs that he used to perform with just guitar and voice, and tried to get me to do backup, and I wasn't any good at it, but it was okay. It was fun for me to try. But a trained voice singing country is just not very good. But he does have all these wonderful songs. And then he also has chorals that I've pretty much pushed to make from our shows. There's usually one or two songs that can stand alone. And so I've started to create choral music. Our Will Be the Wishing Elf, we have, I think, 5 chorals from that, because the songs are really, really fun. And my show choir at my high school did a couple of them. And it's a wonderful thing. So those are all part of our legacy trust that we've created. And all of those works are listed. And then we've decided the orchestrators are getting a 5% licensing royalty, or share, I don't know what they call it, share of the profit of the licensing of their show, whatever they have orchestrated. The first person that we had, he orchestrated 4 shows. So he'll get 5% royalty in perpetuity, really. It's an ongoing thing. As it's licensed, it just hopefully will grow and grow and grow. That's what we want to see happen. We're definitely going to need to have a marketing person that knows far more about the licensing part of it than I can ever learn. I've learned a lot since I retired, but I don't think I can do that. So we're looking for a marketing manager that will take these things and really start promoting them and getting them to the schools and to the colleges and to the professional and community theaters.
Terry, if there was somebody listening who thought, I have to make sure that I have a legacy trust set up for my work, what would be the first step?
Dominus Guild has a good series that can get you started. It's important to find a lawyer that does trusts, and it has to be in the state where you live, because there are different rules in different states. And they were real clear about that in the webinars I watched. But it's just, if they have works of any sort, like writing books or paintings or, anything, should be protected for your heirs and then their heirs, and just to keep it going. It's just really, it's something I wasn't really, I kind of thought about it, but I didn't think enough about it. And when I saw that, I went, oh, we've got a lot that we need to protect.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's, and you know what, you did the next thing, which was not just think about it, but you took the time to create it.
Well, that part's not so easy, because you have to kind of think of every eventuality and how that all works with your particular family situation. And it's important to have your family. The other thing I want to mention is that you should make sure that your family knows about what you're doing and what you would like, what your wishes would be when you're gone. Someone who's appointed the trustee who can, really answer questions and all that. It's a really important thing.
If people are listening, if that alone is the thing that they can take away from this conversation, is the importance of protecting your material. Daryl, I can picture you on the piano, writing the work, seeing the magic, hearing the characters talk. Terry, I can see you researching the costumes and what the next show is. Did you ever elbow him and be like, I really want to do something and fill in the blank? France, 1920, will you write a show about
I don't think I ever do it. No, it was always he said we're doing this, and I. Oh, I did. That's wrong. I did do one show. He did. One of my most favorite shows is Honk If You Love Mother Goose. It's 50 rhymes, and I didn't say 15. I said 50 rhymes in 50 minutes. So he said he was going to do that, and I went, well, I don't know how, but I knew he would. And so I said, I want to have a different costume for every rhyme. So something had to change not in all the characters, but somebody in the next rhyme had to change something. And it was the most fun I've ever had costuming. It's just trying to work out how that would be. And of course, the craziest mess backstage because we were flinging things and, everybody had their own organization. But if you grabbed the wrong thing at the wrong time, you were really, really in a mess. So,
I'm sure you saw the evening talk show where they had Emily Blunt and Lin-Manuel Miranda, and they're changing costumes and doing like everything in the 1 minute.
It was like that.
Good for you. Good for you.
Oh,
well, I want to make sure that we give you the opportunity to help people know where they can find you if they're interested in this canon of work. How can they find you?
Okay. Well, we are TND Musicals. And if you go to licensingmusicals.com, that's our website. And it's got pictures of some of the shows. And right now, the only licensing available shows that are ready and ready to go are the Canterville Ghost and the Case of the Counterfeit Napoleon. There's also a Mr. Sherlock Holmes, which is a one-act version of the Case of the Counterfeit Napoleon. And that will be available pretty soon. I'm working on that.
Terry, when you said one act, it made me think of all the one act competitions that are happening across the country. Mm-hmm. Surely there's got to be an actor or an actor's teacher who's like, where can I find a unique song that's well written, based in literature? They should come and see TNT. Licensing, that's where to find it.
Licensingmusicals.com, that's us.
Very good. Well, I really appreciate the opportunity to talk with both of you. Congratulations on your legacy that you are living and that you are sharing, that you've thought ahead to create. What a gift to the musical theater world. What a journey.
Thank you.
Tom, thank you for joining me today. Thank you.
Well, it's a pleasure to be with you, Megan Ann.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed when you said Boston instantly, I felt like we had something in common because I'd gone to school there. And yeah, I'm gonna lead with this. Do you know our Small World connection?
I do not.
Okay. You did Sea Change at Emerson.
Yes.
So did I.
Oh, come on.
An actor in that workshop at Emerson.
Oh, my God. How wonderful. How wonderful.
Can you believe that? And I didn't even realize it until I started to do some research, and I researched you and I went, wait, Sea Change? And then it all came flooding back. Can you believe that?
Oh, my. That was the very first iteration of the show. And it was a great cast, actually. It was a really nice little performance. I so appreciated it. Yeah.
You're so generous to say that. Well, Tom,
you connected.
Yes, I love it. And you come to us as a composer and a lyricist, with a rich melodic sense. I love that. And a keen wit. And then I know about you from personal experience that you also have a natural gift for musical storytelling.
My great love was always song, words, lyrics, and music. And so when I was about 15, 16, I started to play coffee houses. I would cover material, but I was also writing material, which I still have on reel-to-reel tapes. It's pretty hysterical. And I loved sort of playing for an audience and playing with other musicians when I had the occasion to. And just from playing and playing and playing, my family moved from Watertown, Massachusetts, to Worcester, the big city in central Massachusetts. And I had no friends for a year. So it was the best thing that could have ever happened to my music. I'd come home after school every day and I would play music until my dad came home from work. And my mom was a guidance counselor when they came home. And finally they said, please stop banging on the piano. And that's the way it came about was I'd sit at the piano and I would imagine things. I would imagine stories. I would imagine characters. I would imagine myself in dramatic situations. And was always very connected, the music with words. When I got on to college years, I was playing more formally at coffee houses. And at a certain point, I guess when I was a senior in high school, somebody asked me to write songs for a production of A Midsummer Night's Dream. And I thought, wow, how do you do that? So I wrote a bunch of songs and we performed it in a street theater that toured the greater Worcester area. And it was great. And I loved it. I musical directed and played piano. And so that was my first little taste of writing for character. And that was an eye-opening thing for me because in later years, I found great freedom in not just writing my story, not writing my travails or my joys and sorrows, but putting myself into a narrative in a character's place and writing there. And it was liberating. So I kept up with the singer-songwriter stuff, but then I had opportunities to write for stage and I loved it. And then at a certain point I realized, I don't know what I'm doing. I've got to go to New York. There was a new program developing at the Tisch School at NYU, the famous musical theater MFA program. And at that point, I was invited to audition for Cycle 2. And I was playing a show in Boston. I was like, oh, I don't want to do this. I'm having fun playing this show and it's great and everything's great. And my older sister said, Tommy, they wanted to see you. You go down and see them. And I was like, oh, okay. I was in my mid-20s. And I went down and I met Dina Rosenberg, who was the visionary and the founder of the program. And she, with Yip Harburg and earlier Ira Gershwin, had began to discuss, well, how do we pass on the craft to a new generation? Because there's no longer 25, 30 musicals opening every season in New York. There aren't the opportunities. And so they said, well, I don't know, maybe the thing is just to have free-flowing master classes with a group of 16 writers. So you could apply as a composer, lyricist, librettist. I at that point was writing libretto, so I applied as all three, and they accepted me. And again, I was like, oh, I don't want to go back to school. And then they said, we'll give you a full scholarship and money to live in New York. And I said,
I'm in.
When do I move?
What's the address? Where do we go?
You know, I mean, so I just, life gives you these opportunities, these windows, and it's very important to open the window and climb through.
And Tom, you've had so many opportunities. A Richard Rogers Award winner, the Yip Harbor Award, the American Harmony Prize, and then your work has been seen on Playwrights Horizon, Arts Nova, the O'Neill, New York Musical Festival, and so many others. Like what, as we put together the pieces of where your early influences and those experiences where you are now, connect the dots for us. How does it influence your work today?
I'm forever grateful to these master teachers because they were giving really freely of their time in those first two cycles at NYU. There was no curriculum. There was, from what I understand, there were no salaries they received. And I mean, Peter Stone and Stephen Schwartz and Richard Maltby in particular came in and spent weeks with us. And like Stephen Schwartz would come in and say, look, I have this musical called The Baker's Wife. It's problematic. It needs work. Take the script, come back in a week, tell me how you would fix it.
Wow.
So, you would, I mean, this was a talented, ambitious group of writers. There were 16 of us all together. and we came back, and he would very incisively analyze everything you were putting on the table, and then he'd say, "So now go back and do it a second time." Then he'd come and say, "Okay, choose a spot in the libretto, write a number, write a scene, write a number." It was a very eclectic way of learning.
In preparation for this conversation, you know that the podcast is dedicated to the investor-producer relationship and how
Yes.
that for emerging producers and first-time investors, one of the reasons I'm so excited to talk to people like you who write musicals is to help inform the process for a first-time investor or, an emerging producers. They look at what is it that I'm getting into, and to hear your story, it's so complete with important influences, including early influences where music was just like the air you breathe. So what would you say to an investor about the role of a writer, especially I say writers in the US, we're so writer focused versus maybe collaborations in other parts of the world. But what would you want an investor to know about your role as a writer?
There are two things that come to mind for me. One is that by the time I'm showing anything to an investor, it's something that I've been working on passionately for a long time and had a lot of external feedback on, starting with my wife, who's a storyteller.
Great.
So what I'm hoping for, just as I am in the theater, is I'm hoping to create those moments of catharsis, for the audience, where you feel the audience moved, laughing, crying, moved. That I'm hoping with an investor to find people who similarly are moved by the material of itself, and that I'm building a team of what I call true believers, and so that's the one thing is that it's the desire to share that passion and to move people in the theater, and to bring others in similarly. But then the second thing is that it's not a finished product, that it's still a partial mystery, that it's still something that requires, the head and heart of an investor, of a producer, of a general manager, of other people, so that it's also like a window opening, I think, too. It's not, I never feel like, here's the finished product. Do you like it or not? I always feel like, these are the questions I'm asking through this story that I think people will be moved by. Well, what do you think when you hear it? Where might it go from your influence into? So it's both. I'm coming at you with passionate intensity, but then I'm coming at you with an open mind.
Can you give us an example of producers that have helped become a true believer, step into that world with you, brainstorm answers to these important questions, help move it along in meaningful ways? What does that look like?
Yes, that's, usually that'll start very early on. We'll do a little showcase or 29-hour reading or a backers audition, and then really ask for feedback. Oftentimes, allowing investors to give that anonymously, so they don't feel like they'll hurt my feelings. So I can get the truth, because you want to know what's touching people. You don't want to hear compliments that are not really anchored in the experience. Oftentimes, I think as the production moves further along and producers or investors have questions about the show or opinions about the show, or things they want to express, that's that's an important dialogue. It's a dialectic sometimes as well, because oftentimes it might be that I'm feeling, oh, well, this scene is about this, and this is what it means to me, and somebody on the production might say, well, if that's what it is, that's not what I'm getting. I'm getting this. Oh, you're getting that.
Yeah.
So let me work this and come back to you. It's all about that, because as a writer, there are really like two sides to the writer. There's the solitary writer sitting at the piano, keyboard, or the working sketch pad, or sitting in the woods for writing a poem or something. There's that side, but there's also the other side that you have to be a diplomat, a salesperson, really, a performer. You have to really, in this day and age, the notion of sort of being discovered is rare, and somebody saying, well, we're going to take this show all the way. I don't know, maybe those may still happen to some people, but generally speaking, that's an old sort of paradigm, I think.
Let's do this. Tom, tell us about some of the projects you're working on now. Which are the ones that fuel that artistic fire for you?
Well, I have kind of new stuff and old stuff. The piece that you referred to about the Rogers Award is a musical comedy I collaborated on with my brother Jack, called "The Kid Who Would Be Pope," and that show is it's about a boy who sets out on an epic quest to win the love of a young Catholic nun, and to change the rules of the church so they can marry. And the foundation of this piece was my brother and I falling in love with Julie Andrews in The Sound of Music way back in time.
Do you know that Julie Andrews is an early influence of mine, Tom? All of these parallels. No way. Okay.
That's it. Yeah. Well, we were quite convinced at the age of 8 or 9 or whatever that she was the perfect human being. And she was so musical. She had a Beatles haircut. She was a good person. She fought the Nazis. Anyway, so we created this story about those feelings. Like, how far could you go with those feelings? Well, if you were 11 years old and you had a drama teacher in your Catholic parochial school who was maybe 20, 21, and she saw in you your innate artistic ability and talents and tried to pull those up in you, how she would set your life on fire, and you would fall in love with her in an innocent way, but you would start to think about, well, someday maybe we'll be able to get married. And so this character in our show decides that he's going to change the rules of the church so that nuns can marry. And he finds a very clever way to do that. And he learns a lot in the end about love and miracles. And it's a show that it's not like sort of a scatological Book of Mormon show. It doesn't live there. It lives more in this kind of sweet comic place with a soft landing and a sweet quality that I'd like to get it out there in small theaters in the country and regional theaters in the country, because I feel like people would connect to it. So one of the things is going back to The Kid Who Would Be Pope, and seeing, now that we're post-COVID, if theaters might have an interest in trying to move it along. Yeah, that's the one.
That's the one that comes to mind. It's interesting. You talk about post-COVID and theaters that want to move it along, and it is an interesting environment for new works and new work development now. Such an emphasis on how do we build seasons with recognizable titles. I think it's really tricky.
Yeah.
But all credits to the theaters willing to make that investment. And Tom, part of why I enjoy this opportunity to talk with you is I feel like it's really an investment also in the artist, the writer. I feel like these kind of conversations will put them out to the universe, and people will be drawn to who you are and your work and want to work with you in whatever it is that you're working on. That's one of my hopes for this.
Well, that's wonderful. And all of my pieces are at my website, which is tommegan.com. You can hear excerpts from The Kid Who Would Be Pope, from the Yeats musical A Vision from Sea Change. I got to get the track of you singing it, Megan Ann, up there.
I cannot believe that.
So I get a little more traffic at the website. And some other pieces too. It's interesting, because back to some of what we were talking about before, when Jack and I won the Rogers Award for The Kid Who Would Be Pope, which was based on a production we had done at the New York Music Festival. It was the last year that Stephen Sondheim was the chairperson of the committee that selected the winners, and so I wrote to him and thanked him, and also said to him, could we get together and would you be willing to give some more specific feedback about the show before we take the next step? And he wrote back and he said, no, he said, you don't want any outsiders to be responding to your work at this point. Just complete it, get it up on stage, and then get the response. And I was a little bit chagrined, but then I realized he was so right, because anything he said would have weighed so heavily on the artistic decisions we had yet to make,
I think that's such an astute perspective from, I feel like Stephen Sondheim had a producer's enlightenment on the work. He worked so closely with Hal Prince, as we talked about, and that must have attributed to his success. The ability to know what input you need at what stage, who you're talking to, when it's important to keep it within the echo chamber, when you need to introduce it, and then how you move forward at that stage, receiving input and continuing to have the tenacity to move it along the way. That really resonates. Yeah. That's very good. Great advice.
And Stephen Schwartz, as you mentioned, was extraordinarily generous with all of us writers and continues to be in what he's doing. He really has given back so much to younger writers and composers. Remarkable. Yeah. Oh. The latest I'm working on is I'm working on a site-specific piece with a group in Boston called the Nightingale Chorus, and we're creating a piece that will be done outdoors. My wife, Diane Edgecombe, is a storyteller, so she'll be one of the collaborators on the project, and they are this magnificent chorus. So that at the moment is what I'm working on creatively. Yeah.
Well, and Tom, you've told us where you can, people who are interested in you and your work, where we can find you. Tell us again, tommegan.com. Is that where we find you?
That's it, tommegan.com. M-E-G-A-N. Yeah.
I'll give you the last word as we wrap it up. I think I've had the pleasure to interact with Stephen Schwartz a little bit, and on a project that's on its way to the Big Colorful Way. And I just wanted to echo what you said about his sense of encouragement and willingness to help writers all along their path. And perhaps one of the takeaways from my conversation with you today is the importance of those individuals all along the way, whether it is a mother and father as you're raised, that music is a part of you, standing up to sing a song at the end of after dessert, right? Whether it's your influences as a singer-songwriter in the coffee shops in Massachusetts or on the Ireland coast, right? Or in Broadway, that we find these people that help us to keep the passion alive, to keep the encouragement to do such an important work. And just wanted to say I applaud where you are and what you've done and what you will yet do. It's been a pleasure to talk with you.
Well, it's been a pleasure to be with you too, Megan. I wish we had more time, but it's so true. People at all levels need encouragement for, those, in the arts. It's a roller coaster, so you have to find a way to buffet the difficult times and to keep the inner spirit strong, and to and allow the times when the sails aren't full, knowing that if you keep doing your work, they will fill again, and your work will catch sailing, get out of the water.
Mm.
Anyway,
Beautiful.
thank you so much.
Thank you, Tom.